Okay, guys, so we're going to finally get our hands dirty. We're going to get to fight the Civil War. Today's going to go pretty quickly. It's got a lot to cover, so I want you to get your ears open, eyes on the screen, hand ready to write. All right, let's go. So the Civil War. The Civil War lasted from 1861 to 1865. And this era is really significant because not only did it result in a huge loss of lives, but it settled the slavery issue and it kept the United States together. Because if the South would have won this, we could have been in 4 or 5 different nations by now. But luckily, the South didn't. Not only that we don't have slaves in our nation anymore, but also that we have a nation that's still unified. And I want you to see here on the chart. Take a look at the comparison between the South and the North. And just looking at the population industry-wise, the North had a clear advantage. The North had more manufacturing, more railways, more people, more money. It had everything. What it didn't have is strong generals. The South had almost all the very talented, skilled generals at the start of the Civil War. And this is going to be the reason why the North and the South have stalemates for so long. The North had better generals and soldiers who were better trained, where the North had better equipment. And slowly, as the war goes on, the North starts getting more advantages because they're able to train their soldiers, train their generals, and they eventually have same, if not better caliber generals than the South. So let's look at major figures in the North. You have Abraham Lincoln as President of the United States. Now, Abraham Lincoln doesn't have very much experience in military conflict. He was a senator from Illinois. He was a senator. He was barely a senator. He wasn't a senator very long. He was a very young president. But he didn't have a lot of skill with military. Neither did his generals. A lot of his generals at the start of the war really weren't skilled. A lot of them were very good with logistics, very good training, but none of them were really good military commanders. This all changed with Ulysses S. Grant, who was a lowly non-commissioned officer at the beginning, but quickly became a general when he fought in the backwoods, hillbilly territory of the Western Campaign. And slowly, he became the major general of the entire army after his victory at Vicksburg. And he created an overall plan for military conflict that we still use today. He is one of the founders of our modern American way of war. He basically said this: we have more money, we have more troops, we have more equipment. We are going to attack the South at all times. His plan was called the meat grinder. He said we're going to send our soldiers and face the enemy at every given opportunity and grind them into dust. True, we lose a lot of people, but yeah, gets the job done. On the flip side, the South's president was Jefferson Davis, and he was the Secretary of War for the United States. So he was really skilled with war. He makes a great wartime president. Now, his major general was Robert E. Lee. Not only was Robert E. Lee an awesome general, but he was only one of several the South had. The South had tons of really great generals. One of these was Stonewall Jackson. He was so skilled that he inspired his men to stand fast, to stand in line, not run away or not retreat, even if they were getting killed by tons of bullets and artillery shells. He embodied the Southern general because the Southern general fought, and this is an ideal, not all of them, but the ideal of the Southern military class was that you fought in the front line with your soldiers. And he did that. Stonewall Jackson paid with his life, though. He was killed by his own soldiers later on. But he kept the backbone of the army strong for Lee's army. Now, Lee was a really good general. We're going back to the major general now. He was so good that the United States Army offered him the command of everything, the whole enchilada. He would run everything. But he was a man of sectionalism. And when he heard that Virginia seceded from the Union, he gave up his generalship in the U.S. Army and went down to support the Union. Now, what's interesting is that he was so good that people were afraid of him, just the thought of him. In fact, there's a story of Grant coming into all of his generals sitting at a table, and he comes in and he says, I'm tired of hearing about Lee. I don't want to hear anyone else tell me anything about Lee. You're all basically wusses. You're all saying how great Lee is. You're afraid that he's going to do, this is a quote now, he's going to do a double backflip, land in both your flanks and in your rear at the same time. This is nuts. Stop talking about Lee. In fact, Lee's main weapon was psychological warfare. He got in the mind of all the other generals and psyched them out. Now let's look at the comparison between the inaugural addresses of both people. Lincoln's first inaugural address had three main platforms. He wanted equality. He promised he wouldn't abolish slavery, but he wouldn't allow it to expand. He argued for the Union and the government. He argued that we're going to preserve the Union, make one country, not two, and he thought it was illegal for the South to secede from the Union. Let's look at the flip side, Jefferson Davis's inaugural address. He claimed that the federal government was being hostile, it was being unjust, it was being plain mean and nasty. He basically said that the North was being a tyrant, just like a king. And because the North was being tyrannical and unjust to the South had the right to secede. And they basically took out the Declaration of Independence, which says that if a nation or if a government is unjust to its people, the people have the right and duty to fight a rebellion against it. And that's what he said, that we have the liberty to fight against y'all because you're taking away our individual rights. And basically, he quoted the Declaration of Independence. And mainly, Lincoln and Jefferson Davis's views separate. Jefferson Davis thought that the states had more power, or should have more power in deciding what gets done in a nation, because the government should be a federation, whereas Lincoln thought that the government, national government, has more power because the government's a republic. This is the same debate that happened way back between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. So we finally fight in the Civil War over not only the social slavery issues, but also what governmental type we should have. All right, it's question time. I'm going to take a break. Let's pause the video and discuss questions with you. All right, guys, I'm back. Let's look at Southern secession. So there's three major parts I want you to look at here. The northern states in blue are the Union. They're the ones that stuck together, the United States of America. The red states down here, these are those who had slaves. Now, interesting is that every state below this dark red line, those were southern states that formed the Confederate States of America, the separate nation. Now, there's four states that border the North and the South: Missouri, Kentucky, West Virginia, and Maryland. Now, these states, even though they had slavery, they did not secede. They stayed within the same government. Now, that's going to be interesting later on, because when slavery is rejected in these states, these four states get to keep their slaves. It's not until the 13th Amendment that these states are legally forced to give up their slaves. Now, the first battle is Fort Sumter. What happens after secession is that the southern states, one by one, forced the Union Army to leave the forts in the South. Eventually, there's only one left, and this is in South Carolina's harbor, and this is Fort Sumter. Now, Lincoln gave the general that commanded the fort explicit instructions: you will not leave the fort no matter what. So the South was forced to do one thing and one thing only: to attack it. And Lincoln planned on this. Lincoln hoped that the South would attack the fort, thus allowing him to call for military war against the South. Because the South didn't attack it, a lot of the northern diplomats were worried. They didn't want to start a civil war with the South over something small. But when the South was attacking Union soldiers, that's when they're ready to brawl. So Lincoln used this as a trick to get the South to start the war. Now, there's battles before this point. The very first battle of the war is Battle of Bull Run, and that's down here in the South. Most of the fighting occurred in the southern states. However, one of the first really big influential battle was the Battle of Antietam. Now, what happened is Lee marched after his victory from Bull Run. He continued to have victories all the way through the north, and eventually they were stopped at Antietam, where two large armies clashed. And this is the first really big battle to occur in the Northern Territory. And this was the bloodiest one-day battle in American history. All history up to now. The bloodiest day. 23,000 casualties. Those are dead and injured. Both the North and the South. What happens is Lee is stopped, and he's forced to retreat back south. But what this does do is it allows Lincoln to initiate the Emancipation Proclamation that starts a process to remove all the slaves in the southern states that seceded from the Union. So there's some more fighting down here in the South. Eventually, Lee gets more reinforcements, gets the upper hand, gets more victories, and then he's able to lead another attack up into the north into Pennsylvania. And that's where the Battle of Gettysburg is. The Battle of Gettysburg was such a large battle, it took 3 days to win. So if you look on the maps here, I have day 1, day 2, and then day 3. What happened in day 1, there's only parts of an army. There's only about maybe 10,000 people fighting. But as the days progress, you see more and more and more names on here. And this is significant because the battle really wasn't supposed to be something big. These were scouts that were sent to go check the situation. And they ended up clashing into each other. And slowly more and more troops got together to make this a huge battle. And this became a turning point because the South actually lost this battle. And because the South lost this battle, Lee was forced to retreat back to the South for good. He was no longer able to continue attacking the North because he was low on troops and he was low on materials. And it's a turning point in the Civil War because it turned back the South invasion of the North. No more would the South invade the North. They have to continually fight a defensive battle in the South. Alright guys, here's another question time. Your teacher's going to pause the video and discuss these with you. Okay, so the last major topic we're going to talk about in this first part of our video session is the Gettysburg Address. After the Battle of Gettysburg, Lincoln actually came to celebrate and mourn the death of the Union soldiers to consecrate the burial. And it was one of the real shortest speeches in presidential history, but it was one of the most powerful. And again, he had 3 major points that he reinserted: equality, the Union, and the government. And this is when he announced that all enslaved people in the Confederate States would be free. He told people explicitly that all slaves in the Confederate States would be free. He said the country is worth fighting for. Fight for us to keep the Union together. We're stronger together than we are separate. A house divided against itself cannot stand. And lastly, he said the government should be of the people, by the people, and for the people. This should be preserved. We don't want a government run with slavery in it. We don't want a government split. We don't want any type of these non-democratic ideas in our government. So the only thing to do is keep our government together. Alright guys, so we're going to go to our mini lesson. So today you're going to go to page 272, and on a sheet of notebook paper, you're going to answer the sections titled Northern Advantages over the South, North Strategy, and the South Strategy for Fighting the War. Alright guys, as always, if you miss anything in the PowerPoint, please tell your teacher. They'll go back and pick it up, or go back and review it with you. I know this was pretty quick today. Today and tomorrow it will be. I apologize. This is just a big concept we're going to have to hit pretty quickly. Alright? Alright, well, I'll see you tomorrow.